the families that
Okay.
Call us to order. We don't have a quorum. We only have 4, so this is not going to be an official meeting. But we will work it as a work group. We'll just have some conversation. We don't have to take too long. I just wanted to identify that we have Nina Gorman and Rochelle Griffiths on the line.
Yes.
Yep.
Rochelle Griffith, present.
Okay. and
Nina
then-
Gorman present.
Okay, and then we have Sarah Short here, and then we have one guest in the audience, and it's Rob Say, but I'll let him introduce himself. We'll keep this kind of fluid, open conversation for a few minutes. I know that we've had a lot of conversation about a wide range of issues, and I think what we want to do is just kind of create some dialogue tonight, and maybe while we have Rob here with us, we can just talk about maybe where we get some resources, identify individuals we could have come in to speak at the meeting and going forward. But we've talked about a couple of things that have been priorities, and anyone jump in at any time. Some of the things that we've talked about in here most recently have been the Housing First program, and looking at that with a critical eye in terms of what it does and what it doesn't, kind of. There have been, we have had our opinions on it loosely in conversation, but I think what we want to get people in to talk to us and identify them, whether they be from ACEH, the municipality, nonprofits, to talk about that and to allow, because this board is really designed to give advice and guidance to the assembly and to the mayor's office. And I want us to be able to collect information and then have some work groups to dissect some of that, and then give them our opinions based on the group as a collective is going to have a unique perspective that you're not going to get from, the hand group, for example. It's just different because there's everyone, whether it's practitioners on that side versus somebody who knows somebody whose lives have been impacted, somebody who's been out there, a lot of different angles from looking at this issue. And I think that it'll be important for us to kind of go there. The other thing is we've asked questions, and Rob, these are maybe places where we haven't had new voice in this yet, but we've talked about the deaths that have occurred on the streets this year. I've raised the issue of autopsies. We're not doing autopsies on many of them. And so identifying what actually killed them, was it fentanyl or was it something else? We just report them as deaths, and we're trying to get people to the table, the medical examiner's office, APD, maybe someone else in that line that helps us to understand, that side of it. We think that there's a gap in reporting and that the community is not getting the full picture of what's actually happening. And if we claim that someone's died on the streets and they were homeless, there might be an assumption that it was alcohol or drug related. That might be true. But if it was fentanyl related, we have a fentanyl issue that we want to address. And that might, if we don't know that it killed him, how do we know that there was a bad batch or something, right? And we want to chase these things down that aren't being asked when we don't value. I know it's expensive. Somebody doesn't have a representation advocate. And then I know that there are other issues. We've talked about the funding, how much money we've actually spent over the last 4 years on this. And money that's funneling into our city can come from a lot of different sources. And we want to just put that into perspective and say, look, could there be a better way instead of doing the same thing? And then compare that to what other places are doing once we've gathered that analytically, saying these other cities, maybe they're bigger than Anchorage, but they have a similar profile and they're experiencing common problems that we're all seeing. How much have they spent, and is it working? And what do we know? So those are kind of what we want to do, and we sort of want to start accelerating this conversation. We met just a couple of weeks ago, maybe 2.5, 3 weeks ago. So these last two meetings have been close together. And so our next meeting, if we can get it out 3 or 4 weeks, I guess that would be a place to have this conversation. But whenever we do these work groups, they still have to be noticed if there's 3 or more of us. So this one has been noticed as a meeting. We just didn't have a quorum to conduct any business, make any decisions, anything like that. So what we might do is, as we know that there are things that we want to put on the agenda for the next meeting, we'll just carry that over. But with that, I'll just kind of open it up, and any of the other board members have any points that you want to address now? And we've got Rob here, and maybe while he's here, we can just hear from him in general, maybe on any of those topics I've raised, or you can ask him questions.
One of the things, sorry, this is Sarah Short. One of the things that I spoke to somebody about today or this week was the deaths on the street due to exposure or potential other substances. And it was brought to my attention that there are a number of deaths that have been attributed to the cold, because that was the end cause, but the initial cause wasn't the cold. It was the use of the drugs that incapacitated the person, which then left them unable to care for themselves in the cold, which led to death. And there needs to be a distinct difference between those, and the medical examiner's office does not, to my knowledge, have all that information, but some numbers is better than none. So before I forgot that, I wanted to share that. And then the other thing is, since we have Rob here, one of the things that I noticed from the get-go, from my very first meeting, is we didn't have numbers. And Rob, is in the know. He knows very important things like the number of beds, the number of hotels, the number of locations. And I'd like to at least start documenting that if we can, and see if he's got some information for us. And maybe Terrence, you know all the questions to ask, and I'll take notes. And I'm sure Rochelle's taking crazy notes too.
Yeah, there'll just be notes, and
Yeah.
they'll just be notes. They won't. Yeah, they're not minutes, but mostly just for our own accounting of, things that we want to
Information so that we can talk about it next time.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that okay?
Through the chair, yeah, so you can take notes.
Okay.
And if you just want to forward me any
Notes?
ideas that you want to talk about for the agendas.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right. Great. And maybe I'll just kind of open it up to Rob, and just for the group. I mean, most of us probably know who you are, and we work together, but involving you in this conversation, I think, is big. I mean, you are still actively working with this side of our community, man.
Absolutely.
And it's valuable.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. My name is Rob C. I am, a person in long-term recovery. What that means for me is that my sobriety journey started February 3rd, 2018. So I live and breathe recovery. I also am the deputy director for Henning Inc. And we currently run the emergency homeless shelters. And I also run a Northern Alliance Reentry and Management Solutions, which is a transitional reentry program. So yeah, my hand kind of is on a lot of this stuff, and the questions that you raised in the beginning, I'd like to touch on that a little bit. You said you said something about housing first. Yeah, the understanding of what housing first and how it's applied in Anchorage and how it's been are two completely different things. The idea, like, people think housing first is put people in houses, put people in, just give them a voucher, put them in a house. That's not housing first. That is not appropriate housing first. Housing first is putting people in units, but with the necessary supports to help them achieve a path of self-sufficiency and sustainability. To merely put somebody into a house or into a unit that, and, they aren't capable of taking care of their daily needs, that's negligent. And I think by and large, that is what has crippled the process of people of creating that ecosystem of shelter, housing, and then, growth all the way around. When the Houston's Coalition to End Homelessness came up here, they spelled it out very clear that if you are housing people without the necessary supports, then you are not participating in a housing first model. That was a huge victory for me because I had been yelling that for many, many years. And the other thing that Houston showed us too was that what they did differently, what I really found out was what Houston has done is spent their money properly, meaning the agencies that were selected to that were given funding for this, they put it into housing. They put it into housing first, legit housing first models. But the thing is, they had money. Like, we're trying to do it without any money, really, essentially. At least funding from, I mean, a lot of it because of the funding that we have received. Like, I mean, you see it in the paper. You see the misappropriations of the funds that we got through CARES Acts, through all these different things. So really, the only thing that Houston has done differently than us is to appropriately spend their money and do it in the way that people that are coming into housing have the necessary supports. I think another blunder that we have done is we have used this coordinated entry list, which is okay. We have a system of processing people who are experiencing homelessness. They come into shelter and they get on this coordinated entry list or database. And then there's a system of ranking individuals with the highest needs, and they are given priority. There was this idea that you had to use this list. Like, you have to.
Is this the HMIS list?
It's
different.
It's different, but
Okay.
Similar. Coordinated entry is the first. It was established before HMIS, and yeah. So the most difficult to house are usually made priority wise, but it's not at the same time. Then all of a sudden, service providers feel like they're pigeonholed into, we have to house these people first, the people with the highest needs. Well, sometimes that just doesn't work for certain units that are available, meaning these individuals that have the highest needs maybe are not ready to be in a unit by themselves, in a single unit. And so, but maybe Johnny, who's farther down the list, he's not the highest one, but he is ready and he's going to do well in a unit. So
Who's coordinating the list? Who's coordinating the list?
by and large, the Coalition in Homelessness.
And has their coordination of the list been effective?
I will say it's been inconsistent.
Okay. Do they receive input or updates to the list from their partners? Is that how they?
Yeah, it's anybody can enter people into coordinated entry. Now it is, I think we use it as a guide, but it's not the end all end, for instance, I know, like at the Alex Hotel, we've been working with individuals in the emergency shelter system for years. So I can go in there and say, wow, here's Chris, here's John, here's Bob, and these guys have been working great. They are working now. They do well together. Why don't we put them into this 3-bedroom apartment that's ready to go for them? They do good together. Well, they're not the highest priority. That's okay. We don't need to go by that list. So that's the things that we will do, get creative. That's not that in the past, that has not been encouraged.
And so I guess if funds are rolling through local government before they get to ACEH, right? Does local government, let's say the executive branch, do they have a say in any of this, or is it strictly just the coalition?
So the coalition is the continuum of care designated by HUD. So those funds, the only funding so anything that comes from HUD goes through the continuum of care.
Okay.
And there is money attached to that coordinated entry list. So there is, I don't know how the money works, how they call it, a bonus or whatever you want to call it. There's funding attached to. Is it this one? Okay, there we go. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that if you go by how the coordinated entry list is by priority, there is money attached to those individuals. But as far as
Is there a map or a diagram of this kind of stuff that
the coalition just did a training about coordinated entry. I wasn't in attendance to that, but I think they do have it recorded.
Okay.
I would request it from them.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
And
it would
there's
be
a lot of stuff you can go to HUD, Housing Urban Development website, and learn about coordinated entry, how that list works.
If you could identify, well, I guess if there was somebody from ACEH or multiple people that could speak to their list and speak to Housing First from their perspective, who should we who would be people we would want to contact to say, hey, come in here and speak to us about this?
Two people, I would say, Jessica Parks.
Okay.
Or Taria Ware.
Mhm.
And the other one would be Yvonne Humphreys. I believe that's her last name, Humphreys.
And I had worked with United Way, Nancy.
Oh, yeah.
Is she she'd come over when I was over at the health department
Mhm.
and had talked a lot
Nancy
about
Burke, right?
or Nancy Burke.
Mhm.
Is she still there? Do you know?
Nope, she actually is. She moved to Colorado.
Okay.
She's running some shelter there, some
Okay.
housing program. But other people to consider when it comes to,
she can participate by phone?
yeah, she's a great
Yeah.
asset.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, she's a great
Is there
asset.
any chance that you could get us her contact?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Because I think, as a personal note, that somebody who's not in the system, not in the state, not beholden anymore. I'm sorry. I think that this is Sarah. I think it would be great to get Nancy because she's not in the system. She's not beholden to anybody. We're going to get clean, unfiltered information from her. And because she's nothing to lose.
No stakes.
No stakes. I would really like to have Nancy brought on to speak or put together, everybody give 5 questions to Terrence and pre-send them to her to, put together,
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in this discussion. Kind of what I want to see come out of it is detailing our background on sort of the organized solution that we're seeing from our city government, our municipal government, and from the coalition. Largely, it's just been ineffective. We've got a lot of partners that on the ground level do an exceptional job. And then we have, it's the structure of what's happening, the mechanism that's kind of managing the funds and kind of pushing this intent. And the community, to take it one step farther, I'd like this eventually and soon would be to report it out. Our feedback, getting on an agenda at an assembly meeting and reporting from this board to the assembly, reported out. And then, if necessary, find other avenues through community councils to communicate this, through a report from this board, kind of what we're learning, to give them this angle of it. Rather than have a filter through a media source, to get something that can be something they can consume. It'll have a little more depth to it. And then if they want, they can ask questions and come back. And so just a guide. I know that Assemblyman Rivera, he's been pretty active in trying to keep this group, kind of facing forward and addressing these. And we haven't taken advantage of his guidance yet on attending some of the listening sessions and stuff that have gone on. But I think it's also important that we sort of get out there and hear and talk to folks, since we're not right now directly connected with any large group. We might be with individual pockets, but I think getting us out there and getting another, some feedback from others, whether they be people that are currently in a condition of needing these services to
Sure.
other providers and stuff. And I just think that we've lacked the resource to get to some of that.
Yeah, if I could, it's good that you guys are in the beginning. At a glance, if you're talking about homelessness, I think one thing that we missed the mark in is understanding like homelessness isn't just about, you can't just look at it from an angle of seeing individuals experiencing homelessness. You can't see it. If you see it from that angle, you're going to always be behind the eight ball. You're never going to catch up. You got to see it from all the sides of economics. You got to see it from the side of workforce development.
Yep.
You got to have all those elements in mind when you're talking about taking a stab at the issues of homelessness.
Well, what's the short side of this is that when I hear people talking about somebody who's on the street, we use that term homelessness, but the condition of them sleeping outside that description doesn't fit their condition always. They don't have someplace they went last night.
Right.
So we use that loose term of homeless. But they often say, oh, well, they have mental health issues, or they have substance abuse issues. Well, wait a minute. That's a symptom. That you're looking at the smoke, because there could have been some trauma, or there could have been some situation. There could have been some choices that were made way earlier in life that led them to have a situation where they've come into or grown into some type of a mental health issue that's developed over time, or the drug and addiction problem that's come along that maybe even induced a mental health condition after that. And so I see people commonly address it and then just push it off that they had mental health issues, or that they have a drug situation or an alcohol situation, and now they're on the streets. And so many don't understand that cycle.
And here's the thing, like, because there's there's not a one solution for homelessness, but there is some identifying factors in each sector of overall wellness. Whether it be in treatment, whether it be economics. Like, for instance, I like to speak on economics of it, because we know that when somebody is either incarcerated or experiencing homelessness, they are in Alaska, there are 50,000 to $75,000 tax burden on society, right? So for every individual that comes out of homelessness and that gets a job, they go from that's $100,000 increase. Now, if you can get the data on that for every individual that comes out of homelessness and into the job market, then investors can get behind that. You know what I mean? Investors, meaning stakeholders, meaning housing authorities, meaning federal funding, because now you're showing, like, for instance, like people with lived experience, people that have been there, people that have successfully re-entered society, man, that is a huge boon for us. So if we attack it from an economic growth development aspect, then people see the worth in that. You know what I mean?
Yep. What about functional zero as a measurement? When I look at it, I think it's a misguided measurement, and it only measures certain types of sectors of that situation. And you would have to have repeated measurements of it and have other measures, because it doesn't, because you can have 1,000 people, and when you look at, if you go onto YouTube and you research functional zero, they always show you the veteran population. Well, the veteran population is limited and quantifiable because there are only so many veterans, only so many people that were in the military that would qualify as that. So it's a small population. But if you say, if you can't do it for men versus women because there's an endless number of men versus women, that ratio will change so much. Whereas veterans is a much more definable thing. There might, if you have 2,000 people on the streets of Anchorage at any given day, let's say, we'll just say 250 might be veterans. And if you do functional zero, if you have 1,000 people and there's 100 veterans in that group, 1,000, and you create 100 beds, it's based on this getting them off the street. It's not based on curing,
Right.
fixing, rehabbing,
Right. It's
improving their
super
condition.
narrow.
Yeah,
It's a
and then
narrow
you
view.
take those 100 and move them in. You didn't do anything to prevent the next 100 from
Right,
filling
so
the gap.
always coming. There's
And-
always more coming in.
And then you still have 900 you never even addressed. So when you say functional zero, it's of a subset for that moment in time and did nothing for the backfill.
Right.
And so to me, it's a really inaccurate when you have an administration like we have that uses functional zero as a measurement of success, and it's collaborated, and they say, yeah, to me, it's just a way to look good when you're not, when there's more, we need more math. We need a lot more. That should be just one measurement in a snapshot in
It's just
time.
one- Yeah, absolutely. And the other, exactly. That's why I don't use, like, even with housing first, all these different coin phrases, I don't put no weight into it. You know what I mean? I look at the different sectors and how homelessness is affecting each sector.
Mhm.
You know, workforce development, reentry, treatment, economics, and like, okay, for instance, like workforce development. One big issue is now everybody that working for Henning, we have lived experience. There's not many people on our leadership team that don't have lived experience, that don't have a criminal background, that have successfully re-entered society. But we can't, like, even myself, on paper, I'm not qualified to work for the municipality of Anchorage, but we know that I used to work for the municipality of Anchorage as a contractor. So there's an issue here with people finding gainful employment, and especially in this field, because the workers that are the most effective when it comes to treatment, when it comes to homelessness, are people with lived experience.
Yep.
That's why we have found success with Henning, because we hire people who can get the job done. We don't look at a
They can
person's
see it
criminal history.
differently.
Yep.
Right.
You're kind of that layer that allows them to get back into that stepping stone in the
Exactly.
workforce. And Nina, you've talked about the different types of homelessness. I mean, you've kind of looked at that. Can you talk to that a little bit?
She just left.
Oh, she
just
dropped
hung up on
off.
the phone.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and this is the thing, like, in our existing structure with our traditional service providers, you have to have a clean record. So we are lacking workers at a lot of these different organizations. Or case managers have caseloads that are that are huge,
But they don't have the experience.
So they get people that are, smart and capable, but they don't have enough people with lived experience, and then overall not enough workers. So when we first stood up the Sullivan Marina, we were able to hire up to 45 people within 72 hours, because we know, because of our recovery community we're connected to, we know who can do the work, we know who needs jobs, who's hungry for jobs, that have been denied so many different positions that they would excel in because of their criminal history. So that's one.
And you know who's trustworthy and ready.
Exactly. And then that's the thing, when you're dealing with the individual, it's, we know we've been there, so we can help support, but we can also cut to the chase, like knowing somebody's ready.
So I have a couple of questions. I understand homelessness, and I've been there myself. Mental illness, criminal history, substance use, Financial, medical, or pets and evictions. Those are barriers. And then there's the desire to be homeless, best probably described as feral, you know, like a cat that doesn't want to come in.
Mhm.
They just don't want to. They're happy there. Probably 15 years ago when I was working with the homeless, one of the things that I was astounded by was that there were several people that were actual homeowners. One guy was from Barrow, and he did not want to go home. He owned 2 homes in Barrow, did not want to go home. He wanted to be here on the streets because he felt like he did not deserve a home. And so what I hear you saying, Rob, is that we need to address some of these things we cannot address them appropriately unless we have the
Addressing all at
staffing.
the same time. and
Right.
having the appropriate
Right.
staff.
I mean, you can't address somebody's homelessness without addressing
Their job.
their job,
Mhm.
their medical. I know another guy who lost his place to live, had medical issues, and could not get out of that cycle. So maybe we need to make some suggestions that include, like, giving somebody a classification where if they have a medical issue and solving that medical issue, getting them some sort of medical assistance or, you know, care, insurance, if we got them the medical stuff and then they could solve the medical stuff, it actually might lead them to be able to entertain stability in housing. And then the people with the pets and evictions, I don't know how to solve that. I know that there have been people that have been offered, hey, what if we put you into housing, but we put your pets like into a foster? They don't want to be separated. Those pets are their, for better lack of word, woobies. Their pets are
Their
their
families.
security blanket.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's like, here, let me take your kid for a while you get on your feet. Nobody wants to give up their kid. Nobody, and that's why people who have children that really could benefit from having help don't want to come forward and ask. They'd rather hide the kids in the camp than expose themselves because they're afraid of having their children ripped away. And I understand that totally. So if we ask the assembly to maybe set up, instead of these larger hotels, transition homes that are monitored, like you've got a capable person.
Right. But I mean, I understand what you're
Yeah.
saying. I just want to cut in there because
Yeah.
if we continue to see this issue as a government solution,
No, it's not.
then we got to cut the assembly talk out of it. We have to activate citizens, private sector people. Because I'm telling you right now, I'm working with 4 different individuals who want to start transitional housing right now. Just private people, you know. This is a people problem. It's
Yeah,
a
and
people solution.
I think that where the problem came in is when everybody started giving government the money and government the say, and then government through this HUD program and this continuum of care gives it to a group that's got the leader of that group as part of government, and they start picking and choosing the winners, and you have government solutions that are ideological, not purpose-driven.
And not
What-
result.
You can't have an ideological person from government running the group that controls the money that's been given to government to hand back to the private sector. When the money originated in the private sector, it came from taxes, it came from donations, it came from all these things, but it ends up coming back through government, and it's really inefficient. And the solutions are
And it's
ideal,
watered down.
right? Well, the solutions are based on ideology. They're
Right.
not based on
It's not based on
science.
Heart. It's not based on science, and it's not based on the heart.
Yeah.
There's people that are compassionate out there who just need to be educated on how to do this.
Yeah.
You know.
Can I speak a little bit?
Yeah, please, Nina.
My name is Nina Gorman, and I definitely know about homelessness, and I lived at the Brother Francis shelter when it was open. I've been incarcerated, been several times, been in treatment centers countless. Got a degree in behavioral health many years ago in counseling addiction, struggled with it myself. I have a house in my own village. Am I still here? Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we're listening.
Okay. and I chose to live homeless on the streets. There is very much different types of homelessness, and you've got to get that assessed in the door. And then, of course, I became a case manager, so I case managed homeless. But before I even did that, I was at the downtown soup kitchen where it was really crazy. I was there, and then I case managed. But I also came out of crazy myself. And now I have been working with homeless veterans, people coming out of DOC that don't even know how to function in society because they've been locked up so long and the world's changed so much and they don't even know how to connect the dots. And I'm hearing the brother Rob there very much. He's totally speaking thing I already know what he's talking about. And there's different groups of types of homelessness. And any kind of a place that you can get together that can generate income, yes, we have to think of all the different ones, whether they're elderly, disabled, mentally, whether it's addiction, or are they people just misguided? Maybe they're foster cared out. They were foster cared out. They turned 18 and now they put them on the street. Or maybe they're recently, I know of another program that got a couple back to their village that was homeless. And now they're back in their village where they should be with their family. We got veterans that don't want to ask for help. They're used to being self-sufficient. There's a lot of funding available. How do I know? Because I was given a chance to work with one, connect the dots for them. They're now getting what they got coming to them financially. But that person didn't even know any of that. How many are out there like that don't even know it's available? And they have a housing program available for the homeless veterans. And they're loaded. And a lot of it, people don't even know that these people are even out here on the street unless they want to get out there and get their hands dirty. And yes, I agree. We can't just call everybody homeless just because they were found dead on the street. Because people in my own family have died from fentanyl overdose. Even in the Bristol Bay, thank you, Lord Jesus, they busted them. That was praying they would bust that thing, and they did bust it. They got the kingpin guy himself from out of jail recruiting our people in the Bristol Bay to sell that crap. So I do know a little bit about homeless and what it is and the assessment part of it. There's different types. If you can generate some people don't want to live alone. Some people want to live in a group. Some people can live alone if they have a little bit of assistance. The landlord that I work with, that I've been working with, he doesn't mind helping if there's people that will check on the people once in a while and just say, hey, how you guys doing over here? How's your support system? There's all kinds. There's elderly, there's disabled, there's people that don't know how to function in society. If they had other people believe in them, help them. There's workforce. There's transitional homes where they can get jobs and then pay a lower cost of rent for having shared living and have that money generated and go back into a program. And I'm hearing what you're saying there. But then there's also the other ones where people are in assisted living home. When I hear that they're paying $3,100 a month for a person coming out of DOC to stay in a nasty group home up in Mountain View that had to be bug sprayed because I had to work with that person, and that's a veteran, that's a problem.
I agree with you.
I better shut up because I know more than I've been saying. I've been being quiet for a long time these last couple of meetings.
Well, I think, Rob's time is coming tight here, and I know that our meeting time is really wrapping up. What I'd like us to do, our next meeting schedule here is going to be April 11th at 5:30 p.m. And that's a Thursday. It's the week after the elections. So that's kind of the first clear window we have. What I'd like to do is we'll all get the email circulating to remind everyone, but I'd like to get our speakers and stuff lined up. And I think maybe that'll give us a little bit of time too. I think that we can start to draft some of this in a written form that we can maybe work with, and bring it to the table. This is just information that we really have to get out to the community, whether it's through a forum, whether it's through a listening session of our own. But we've got to change the gears, different mechanisms. There's some touch points here, but I'll reach out to everyone just to make sure that you have the meeting schedules, and that if there are names that we need on for our speaking list, we'll work on that. And then maybe I guess, Rob, one of the things that I would ask you to do is, if you're interested in sitting on this board, that and if you know others that would be interested as well, we need to get on board through the municipality's website, through the mayor's office, in the boards and commissions section. Apply for the Houseless Lived board. That's the one. And you can submit all your stuff online. It doesn't have to be complicated, formal. Basically, they usually ask for a cover letter. It can be one paragraph. Hey, this is who I am. I'm interested in being on this board. And then a light resume. But that's just the formality of that process. And then we will put the word out to them. Hey, you're going to have some things showing up in the queue. Get these. If you can't find it, reach out to us. We'll make sure that you get there. Because the faster we can get them with it, the faster they can submit that back over to the clerk's office in an upcoming meeting. Because that process will take a little bit. So the municipal manager has to get it on the docket. It's got to get over the clerk. Clerk's got to have time to process, and then got to fit it in. And then we'll talk with Assemblyman Rivera too, and let them know, hey, we've got these things. And I think if everybody's participatory and working with our assembly members and administration on both parts of the process, we'll be able to get people presented to the assembly in a timely fashion.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm all for it. I'll definitely put in some work to recruit some solid people.
Okay.
The one thing I want to say before I step away is, when you're thinking of homelessness, and we're thinking about processes, in my experience, what I've seen, what works is the ecosystem of homelessness, getting somebody from shelter into a house is so for instance, they come to the Sullivan Arena, they get an initial assessment, they get a bunk. If they stay in the shelter for a while, they keep the bunk area clean. That tells you right there, if they can keep a bunk area clean, they can keep a room clean. If they can keep a room clean for a while, they can keep a unit clean.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this, and what that process looks like for me, if you want to put words to it, is assessment, intervention, and then transition.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have that, and then you're constantly reassessing individuals.
Yeah.
And those individuals, and so it's important who's doing that assessment work. It's important who's doing that intervention, what proper intervention. That intervention might simply just be getting a job.
Well, they're working towards something positive. They're showing growth. They're showing that they have the capacity to meet that.
And that's it. If they're showing this, that means you're doing a thorough assessment, because you're watching, and they're responding, and you're watching again, and they're responding, and you're watching them go through this process. That's why our mission is, we walk alongside you. We can't make you do this, but we can only enhance what you're willing and capable of doing for yourself. And if you can't do that, then we can trickle you down into the proper transition. Like, for instance, the most difficult, the folks with the mental issues, Gary Hudson, our behavioral technician, he is you never hear about him, but he is the single most important person that we have. If there's one person that's important to our operation, it's him. He has 20 people on his caseload who are the most difficult. One case, for example, this individual who I've known for the last 10 years, walking the streets, talking to himself. Never have I had a normal conversation with him before, but everybody knows him. When we first opened up the Golden Lion, all of a sudden Gary comes walking in, and here comes Brian, and he's like, Brian, Rob. He's like, hey, Rob. That was the first time I've ever even heard him say my name before. But Gary has got these guys these guys on his caseload. He's doing med management. He's built a relationship with these guys, and now these guys are living themselves. Not all of them, but you know,
their best
they're living, they've
They're
got a
getting-
shot. They've got a shot. And the only thing we can do by using that model of walking alongside somebody, only enhancing what they're able to do for themselves, that gives them a sense of purpose, gives them agency in the choices they make. It gives them dignity and grace, and it gives them confidence that they can keep doing it. But that is not possible if we're not constantly running through that process of assessment, intervention, transition, assessment, intervention, transition. And then after a while, you get to a place where you're not only getting these individuals where they need to go, you're literally building community. You're literally building community, because that's the goal. The goal isn't just to get somebody a roof over their head. It's have them enter society and feel supported in their day-to-day activity. So I'll leave that nugget there, because that's what needs to be the focal point. You know, we can go along all day long and talk about what we've seen, who's done this and all that. But if the end goal isn't to solve homelessness, the end goal is to create community. And we can do it, but we can only do it by enhancing what somebody's willing to do for themselves.
I think this group has a potential to do a ton
I do too.
in common out to. There just isn't another board. There isn't an independent voice. There isn't some organized structure anywhere outside of practitioners in our circles. But this is like one of the few formal settings that we can speak. And so we're right at time tonight. I appreciate everybody coming in and just giving a few minutes. April 11th, 5:30, we'll come back. And then in the meantime, in that gap, we'll just try to get out. I'll reach out to everyone, make sure we get a list of speakers. If you need help with the application process, we'll get questions and stuff. And we'll try to make sure that we have a quorum for the next meeting. So
Awesome.
I appreciate
Appreciate
everything.
you guys. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, everybody.
Hey,
Good night.
Rob, sure hoping you're going to be on board with us, Rob.
I'm in. I'm all the
You
way
said
in.
yes, right?
I'm
Said you're
in.
in like Flynn. Okay.
All right.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Take care.
Hey, this is Rochelle. Hey,
Oh, hey, Michelle.
I'd like to say thank you to Rob for sharing. That was a good end to the meeting. Absolutely the community part, because if I think about family members, they miss that. And then like Nina said, they want to be around people. And that was what happened with a key family member who didn't end up, they succumbed to their addiction. And that's huge. That's like pivotal. You have to have a community. That's so important.
all
So
do,
I
right?
appreciate you for coming. Look forward to working with you. I'm grateful for everyone who showed up tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Good night, everyone.
All right. See ya.
Right.